Good morning, everybody. My name is Bob Mack, and I am a member of the Park Ridge Community Church Creation Care Team. I am standing on the banks of the historic Des Plaines River on the western edge of the city of Park Ridge in the Cook County Forest Reserves. It's a beautiful morning. The sunlight is filtering through the trees. The crickets can still be heard chirping in the background. Birds are singing in the air. It's just a glorious morning. And I'm going to walk along the banks here and talk a little bit about water conservation and some of the things that we can do to improve the beautiful environment that we live around. Not many of you know, or maybe many of you do know, Park Ridge is situated on a major watershed divide in downtown Park Ridge. We get our name Park Ridge from the fact that there is a summit located right in the downtown area which divides two major watersheds in Park Ridge, namely the Des Plaines River, where I'm standing, and the Lake Michigan watershed. Water west of the summit in Park Ridge would drain to the Des Plaines River. Water east of the summit in Park Ridge would drain to the north branch of the Chicago River and find its way to Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan has an outlet ultimately to the Atlantic Ocean, and the Des Plaines River drains to the Gulf of Mexico through the Illinois River and the Mississippi River. I bet you didn't know that we had a lot of global connections to those waterways right here in our own town. Now, of course, there's been many projects that have been built over the years that have changed the historic drainage patterns, namely the Deep Tunnel Project, the reversal of the Chicago River, the combined sewer system. Those projects all contributed to changes to the historic patterns. But for the most part, surface runoff will work its way down to those watersheds, as I mentioned. I'm going to continue walking here. I'm on the banks, actually on the eastern bank of the river, heading south, and I noticed there were signs of beaver activity on some of the trees. You could see the gnaw marks from the beavers chewing on the trees, trying to get these trees into the water to build dams. It's interesting that we have this kind of wildlife right here in our own backyard. So that's really, really exciting to me to see that. Here's an interesting clam right on the bank here, freshwater clam. So there are signs of life here. The Des Plaines River has actually improved tremendously since the construction of the Deep Tunnel Project, which allowed combined sanitary and storm waste to go into a system that ultimately is treated instead of draining into the river directly. I spent most of my professional life as a civil engineer trying to rid urban areas of stormwater, and that philosophy is changing now. Historically, we would build sewers and ditches and drainage systems that would move water from an urban area into a major waterway like the river or a creek system. And now we are taking a different approach, what we call the best management stormwater approach, where we try to utilize a holistic approach which actually treats the water and not only just tries to get rid of it. And that approach really focuses on the use of infiltration. Infiltration is a mechanism which allows water to drain into the ground. And with all the hard surfaces, concrete driveways and streets and buildings that have been built over the years, we need a system to get water back into the ground that will recharge the aquifer. So we've come up with ideas such as porous pavements, which are being used in a lot of areas. We are also using systems called rain gardens and bioswales, which encourage the use of natural plants and other types of vegetation that will bring water into the ground more naturally. We have in Illinois a very unique soil composition in the upper part of the surface, a lot of clay. So it's hard for water to penetrate the clay surfaces. So plants such as big blue stem, native prairie grasses, and other plants have deep-rooted vegetation that could actually penetrate that clay soil and bring the water into the ground. One of the things I wanted to focus on, one of the things that you can actually do in your own gardens is to plant a prairie garden or a rain garden, which can encourage infiltration by putting in plants other than Kentucky bluegrass, which only has a 4-inch root system. Native prairie grasses can grow roots as deep as 10 feet, which can actually move the water more efficiently into the ground and recharge the aquifer. And not only that, it actually cleans the water too. So stormwater that runs off on land is laden with usually fertilizers and nutrients, pesticides and other things that are bad for the water. And the use of an infiltration can actually treat the water and make it cleaner and better for the environment. If you heard of the red tide down in Florida, a lot of that is caused by a abundance of nutrients that run off the agricultural lands in the Midwest of the country and drain down the Illinois and Mississippi River system and get into the Gulf of Mexico, where it causes an algae bloom which thrives on those nutrients, but when those algae die, they settle to the ground and they decompose and they use up oxygen, depleting other species from that oxygen, which causes them a very difficult life and causes a lot of death in marine life. And that red tide also gives off a very nasty toxic smell and a toxic chemical that is very dangerous for the fish life and the marine life in those areas. So one of the things that you can do is to use less fertilizer, less herbicides on your own property, which will contribute to the benefit of our waterways, and not only locally but globally. One more thing you can do, and I wanted to talk about, is you can minimize the use of your water. You know, we get our water from Lake Michigan, which is one of the most abundant water sources of fresh water in the world. 20% of the world's fresh water is located right in our backyard in the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes watershed. That's an amazing amount of water that most of the rest of the world would fight over and be very jealous over. But we have it, and we're probably not aware, and we probably take it for granted of what we have right here. But even though we have a lot, we should still conserve and not use as much as we need. Things like fixing your leaky plumbing, maybe not using as much to water your lawns. Other ways, collecting rain in rain barrels, which actually helps reduce runoff, and then you have a water source for watering your gardens and your lawns and things, would be another way of conserving water. So those are just some of the things that you can do to help your environment. I just heard a fish back there. How cool is that? I hear there's northern pike coming back in the Des Plaines River, so I'm really excited. But I'm going to close out here and say goodbye, and I hope that all you guys can get out here to the Des Plaines River someday and just take a walk around and see how beautiful it is. You can go canoeing or biking or hiking and just sit out here and enjoy the beautiful nature that God created for all of us. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye and have a blessed and beautiful day. Take care. We'll see you then. Someday, if you're out here, I'm always here. Take care. Bye-bye.